So a lot of people really aren't happy with the PS5 Pro. A lot of people saying it doesn't do enough to be its own new console, whereas others are buying it because it's actually selling pretty well. So there's this weird drama behind it. And we got a video today from Mr. Matty Plays, I think, going over this drama. Haven't watched it yet. Again, like usual, going in raw.
Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today, and we're sitting down to talk again about the PlayStation 5 Pro. We talked about this bad boy when it was first revealed, and yeah, I was with a lot of you out there losing my mind over the price.
It's expensive.
Tag. No
That's the other
disk
thing.
drive, got to buy that on top of it, plus the stand, and with everything combined based on my setup and, of course, the game library behind me, I'd be spending over $800 on a mid-gen refresh.
Which is wild.
Miss me.
Which like, by the way, like here in Canada, like you're looking at $1,000.
But now we have our hands on reviews for the PS5 Pro. We get to see news on how Sony is receiving this PS5 Pro release. Is it performing well? And then, of course, we're seeing scalpers go up in flames, which always makes me very happy as
that's a good thing.
Collector. So there's much to be said about what's happening with the PS5 Pro situation, and all of it comes back to the middle with how video game discourse is handled nowadays. Really stepping out of the gate of the PS5 Pro reveal, there were two narratives.
Honestly, before he gets into that, I do not see this console doing enough to get me to buy it. Like, first of all, I play everything on PC now, and that's expensive as it is. Like my PC is very expensive, like 4 times what I would pay for a PS5 Pro. And so yeah, it's really expensive, but it runs everything perfectly. And I have to buy it more often than I would buy PlayStation, but it runs everything. And now all of these games on PlayStation, on Xbox are just on PC anyway. So like, to me, that's like the easy way out, but it's also the expensive way out. So like, if I am going for a cheaper way, does the PS5 Pro do enough to get over the PS5?
Going about it. One was this is overpriced and Sony is getting greedy based on massive failures like Concord, and of course the pressure that Sony faces to have their PlayStation business be the primary moneymaker versus something like Microsoft, where Xbox can underperform a little bit because they're not the #1 moneymaker out of all of the Microsoft.
Yeah, they're trying to sell the Game Pass.
Number 2, the other narrative was that this is a, quote, enthusiast machine, and it should be treated as such. It's not for the common consumer, which I think flew in the face of what happened with the PS4 Pro, which was, for many people, a very easy purchase. I never really bought into a mid-gen refresh, so I skipped out on the PS4 Pro, but it was fairly priced.
I don't remember whether I got one of those or not.
And it was playing some of the best exclusives on the market at that point in the best way possible. So it was really a win-win-win for PlayStation, especially with the timing of 4K televisions and their pricing. So it worked out well for PlayStation, where yes, this is not only a touchstone for video game discourse and what this information means to support those varying arguments, but it is also a touchstone for where exactly the industry is at. As in, right now, we're seeing diminishing returns on
super
visual
small
upgrades,
returns,
in my opinion.
Pro
is very clearly indicative of that, whether it's Sony's own official comparisons or the many reviews I've watched. It just shows.
It was wild to me that when they put out the video showing off this game, or sorry, this console, how similar the comparison between the two actually look.
That this is something that, yeah, you could say is an enthusiast machine, or you could argue the same thing, which is this is just greed. Like, are you really charging this much for this little of a difference? I think the reality.
I think I saw a video though saying that the price of it is fairly reasonable for what they're offering.
It's all about how the games of the future perform on this thing, and that's how it's going to justify its cost. But right now, looking at the library that is available on PS5 Pro of upgraded titles, I don't know, man. It doesn't look like that good of an investment, but we'll see how that statement ages. So
the other thing too is when you're buying a new console, so like for example, when PS3 upgrades to PS4, PS4 upgrades to PS5, there's like a year or maybe 2 where there's like no games. I remember when the PS3 came out, it was super expensive and there was like 4 games out for like years that like were just on that. I think Resistance was one of them. Resistance was the one I remember at least.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into what's going on with gaming, consider subscribing. So starting off at the top, right now, PS5 Pro supports over 50 games with updates. And these are everything from Alan Wake 2 to Baldur's Gate 3 to Diablo 4, Dragon's Dogma 2, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth's in here. Of course, God of War Ragnarok is here. Hogwarts Legacy is. Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Resident Evil 4, Stellar Blade, which is also getting new Nier Automata DLC soon, which I can't wait for. The Finals, Warframe, The Last of Us 1 and 2. So a lot of stuff here has been updated where you can go ahead, fire this thing up, and get a lot of usage out of it when it comes to back compat titles. A lot of these games I've already played, but if there was one game I was really interested in seeing how it was doing on the PS5 Pro, it was definitely Final Fantasy VII.
I think this is one that people said it's one of the biggest difference.
Really great, where it had a bad performance mode and it had a great quality mode, and now you got something in the middle where you're not really sacrificing.
Like that's a pretty big difference. Like this one's a pretty big difference.
Originally,
like just look at the blur on the like flowers.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and that was what I was hoping for more of when it came to the PS5 Pro. Was more.
And I guess that's the thing that you have to look at is like eventually all the games may have that big of a difference, right?
Like what you have with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But since a lot of games were so well optimized at their original launch, you'd only get a couple of situations like this with, I'd say, something like Dragon's Dogma 2, which performed a lot better on the PS5 Pro. But I was actually watching Skill Up's review, and he showed something with a mode in Horizon Forbidden West where it just completely sunk the FPS in this brand new mode. And this is a trade-off where you get maybe minor improvements on graphical fidelity for the trade-off of 30 frames. And I think the sales pitch for this entire system was simply this: you don't have to really worry about picking one or the other. At least that's how it felt. But the reality is that you still very much have to make that selection. That's where you factor in the future of the PS5 Pro.
And that's a problem, right? When they're selling that and then you don't get
with
that.
The back compat titles, but games that are building with the PS5 Pro in mind, what can they squeeze out of this thing? And that's where I think the most of the value in
GTA is a good example of
However,
what happens with that.
I also wanted to talk about how PlayStation is handling things when it comes to the price point and how they feel things have gone for them, where they say that the PS5 Pro price has not had a negative impact on the sales of console, according to Hiroki Totoki, the Sony
Hiroki Totoki, what a name.
Recent financial reporting, Totoki said, spotted by Genki Japan, hardcore users are the target of this hardware. In terms of the pricing, many people
he even said that. He said it's you're not a hardcore user. This isn't for you.
Had a negative impact, I don't think. This is further supported by information here on Gaming Bolt, where they state PS5 Pro pre-orders were slightly stronger than PS4 Pro. Speaking during Sony's recent quarterly financial briefing, President, CFO, and CEO Hiroki Totoki revealed that the PS5 Pro's pre-orders have actually been slightly stronger than what the PS5 Pro managed prior to its release at the same period. So you hear that and you're probably like, well, what's the problem, Maddie? Like, okay, what we have here is a situation where the PS5 Pro is overperforming compared to the PS4 Pro, and it's shoving it in the face of haters. What's the problem here? Well, then you look at this next bit of news here, where it says the lack of PS5 Pro shortages means some scalpers are reselling at a loss.
That's good. That means that Sony did a good enough job picking the right amount of these to get out there that there's not a shortage of them, which is rare. The situation
appears to be the same in other countries, including Japan. Otaku Research Institute reports that while the console is now seemingly sold out at most Japanese retailers, some stores were selling it throughout most of the launch day without a need for reservations. On Japanese resale site Mercari, which by the way is phenomenal, sellers are reportedly selling the console for 10,000 to 20,000 yen, more than the retail price, which is $65 to $130 US dollars. But Otaku Research Institute notes that because Mercari takes 10% cut and shipping costs also have to be considered, that this still results in many resellers either breaking even or taking a loss. It also reports that numerous sellers on Mercari are selling for lower than the retail price, stating that they are selling at a discount because multiple items were purchased. And then
yeah, so if a scalper buys 100 of these, okay, that's too many, 10 of these for 10 grand ish, be a little less than that, but let's say 10 grand, and they need, let's say, 10 grand to pay their monthly bills, they need to sell these fast. And if they're not selling and can't make a profit on them, they have to sell them at a loss.
EGC themselves posted a bunch of UK sellers for the PS5 Pro, putting it at a loss as it currently stands.
Which is wild.
Means, in my opinion, is that two things can be true at once, which is something I've always emphasized on this channel, that it's not always one side or the other, pick a side, bro, or one narrative or the other. It's that multiple things can be true at once. What it seems like we have here is a situation where the PS5 Pro is enjoying nice early sales, at least compared to the PS4 Pro, which was
nice sales, not incredible, nice.
At the same time, however, stock is much more readily available where people can go out and buy one if they wish, but it's not selling out to the degree that the original PS5 was, where scalpers are not making a pretty penny on this. And I don't know what scalpers actually anticipated, because it's one thing with the PS5 Pro for the 25th anniversary with the PS1 imagery on it.
Yeah, this was cool. I'll give them that. This was cool.
That is something you buy and resell and try to make a lot of money on, that people would pay a premium for because it's a collector's item. But I'm not sure exactly what scalpers expected by buying this thing and thinking it was going to sell out tremendously. I just feel like that's a complete lacking of market awareness, because as I said, when this whole thing was first revealed, it is proved.
You want to do that when the Switch 2 comes out, because whenever Nintendo releases a new console, like I remember with Wii's for like years, every single Christmas, sold out. You got to go on like some sort of online selling site to
has that built-in die-hard ecosystem, kind of like Apple, where once you're in, you're probably not leaving. And I think one good example that will sound very offshoot but will make sense in a second is actually Call of Duty. Right now, early numbers are showing that Call of Duty
this is actually a good example.
Is up on all platforms on player base.
Technically,
but that there has been a massive increase year over year on purchases across Steam and PlayStation for Black Ops 6. This is all happening while Call of Duty Black Ops...
By the way, the main reason why it's not on Xbox is because people who are on Xbox, a lot of them, the sales of Call of Duty this year on Xbox are down by 11%. Now, I think what's going to be super telling is tomorrow, this video is probably already, or not out yet when this happens, but when Season 1 comes out, I think when they see the sales numbers of the Battle Pass, that is when they're going to be like, okay, yeah, we nailed it this year.
Is day one in Game Pass on Xbox's side of thing. And Xbox, by the way, has had for multiple generations now the term attached to their box, which is shooter box. This is not to say that Xbox is a pure failure or that Call of Duty is failing on their platform. I don't even know if that's true anymore. What it does say is, despite the price proposition that's been put into place here for something like Call of Duty Black Ops 6 on Game Pass over on the Xbox ecosystem, where sometimes in the case all you need is this right here, a controller, some cloud streaming, and boom, you can just play it for $20 and sign off. That's great value there. But for people who are in on the PlayStation ecosystem or care about owning their games, they're going to go ahead, buy the product.
But by the way, you don't own the games anymore.
Call it a day. That's not to say that Microsoft is over in the corner.
You're technically renting it because they can just shut the servers down.
In a lot of ways, because they just want you to be in on the products they're making, and all they care about is the revenue line going in this direction, not that direction. Yep. That's all they care about. But what it does show is that there is a die-hard commitment to gamers for the consoles that they have selected this generation based on what was selected last generation, which was the PS4 in spades. That digital,
which was a huge generation, by the way.
The next half step in the
that was a bad one for Microsoft to lose.
That is why the PS5 Pro can sell, right? It can sell because you look at what's happening.
Which I was playing on PlayStation during that time.
Where there's a lot of pick this mode or that mode, and people are looking at it with the hopes that future games will not be like pick this or that, but just pick this thing that combines them together, fidelity and strong performance. Right now, though, looking at the samples that we've seen for the many games that are supporting PS5 Pro, and it seems like there is a good batch there, but otherwise that it is not as excellent as people had hoped for. And I think it's reflected in the reviews. A lot of them were very middle of the road, like, hey, if you got the cash to spend, sure, I guess so. But look, man, like,
these are good reviews.
I do this for a living, right? And I don't
see any red numbers there.
But I do this for
even yellow.
I typically like to have the best hardware that I can have at my disposal for like reviews. Negative
reviews,
I get none. The most use out of it. It definitely improves the experience, et cetera, et cetera. But I look at those prices and I think to myself, absolutely not. You know, I just can't stomach buying a disk drive and buying they couldn't even include the stand. So it goes to the point I made at the start of this whole video. For me, at least, this is where we're at with video game discourse. I can totally see a world where you look at all the information I proposed to you and said, it's selling, but it's not selling a ton. And that's because PlayStation got too greedy, and that's why I'm not supporting them. At the same time, you could say, look, it's selling decently. It's an enthusiast machine, and it's being treated as such. And it's just, again, that's where we are nowadays, unfortunately, with a lot of conversation, is that it requires nuance, right? I'll be the first to say I was storming out the gates like, what the hell is going on with the PS5 Pro?
And I think, like, you have to understand, like, you could argue this with like really anything. Like, you would say, okay, you can get a pretty decent PC for the same price as this. Like, yeah, maybe not as good or as good performance as the PS5, and it won't be as consistent for as long a period of time. But like, you don't hear people saying the same thing about cars. Oh, well, you bought that car for $50,000. You can get one that essentially does the exact same thing that isn't as fast for $10,000. What are you thinking? You could look at it that way as well.
Still pointing and laughing at the scalpers who thought they were actually going to buy this thing and resell
we all
it and
agree
make a
on that
coin
one
off of people. But now we're seeing like stock shortage isn't as much of a problem as it used to be, right? This was a big deal at the start of the generation with COVID, chip shortage, that sort of thing. But now we're seeing
also this wouldn't work for, because the reason why I believe that like the scalpers can do things at like Christmas with like the Wii is because those consoles, you can't go and just play the games that are coming out on those consoles on older gear. Whereas none of the PS5 Pro games cannot be played on PS5. So if, say for example, someone's kid really wants a PlayStation to get Last of Us 2 for Christmas, they're out of PS5 Pros. Okay, we'll buy him a PS5 and get him the game and he could still play it.
A much bigger difference in stock and supply of it. However, I think the other telling part will be, what does Nintendo do with their next generation of Switches?
Which
how much
we're
stock
told
will be
we were going to hear about by now, by the way.
For that, will that sell out instantaneously?
Probably.
How much will they make available for people? Time will tell on that. But I think this is a situation where a lot of things are true at once, and I'm seeing all different narratives, all different aggressive takes online about the PS5 Pro. And again, I was right there with y'all, like just screw this system and what it stands for, and I still stand by that. But I can't just look at the data here and go, well, it's a bona fide failure because of my beliefs. I just feel that's missing the point of what the data is suggesting here. But nonetheless, the PS5 Pro situation is deeply fascinating to me, and so
it'll be interesting in like a year, 2 years from now to see what the differences in games are. Like, it just released, like we don't know. But
reading here as someone who is looking at it with an open mind, saying like, okay, can a reviewer prove it to me that I should buy this thing? When I watched it, I went, nope. If anything, I feel more certified about why I didn't purchase it. What would make me a bit more uneasy is as we move into the future, right? We're seeing the diminishing returns on visuals, but however, games have always had to pick one side or the other. Will the PS5 Pro enable a world where that choice matters a little bit?
So here's what I actually think, is I think what's going to end up happening is developers want their games to look incredible. And now that there's more kit behind the PS5 Pro, essentially what they're going to do is the developers are just going to up the graphics, and then they're going to be much better on the PS5 Pro. But when you use those graphics, it's still going to drop the frames. This happens on PC still, right? So I don't see that issue disappearing, but maybe.
So that would have my interest. Like if something such as a Starfield PS5 edition was 4K 60 at launch, right? I hate that that's the first example that came to mind, but you think of that multi-plat Starfield version that could be better than the Xbox version. That'd be nice, right? So we'll see what happens with games that move to PlayStation or in development for PlayStation. What do their exclusives do to take advantage of that sort of hardware there? That's also
not even just the exclusives, like all of the games, right?
Each major exclusive, whether it's third party or first party, PlayStation is doing. They want to give you a reason to buy the PS5 Pro, so they'll show off some unique modes for that. So I'll be keeping a close eye on that, and if we continue to see a lot of games just delivering in a really strong way on PS5 Pro, then that would start to
everyone's wrong.
Turn my head a bit and consider a purchase. Hopefully by that point, it'll be at a lower price point, because I don't want to spend $800+ on a system just to stand it up on my entertainment center and get mildly better performance. Because that's the one thing, like looking at the back compat comparisons, like it wasn't like a lot of major improvements. Like it was very fine details that you were noticing. That's where we are with visuals nowadays, and why
that one's a pretty big one. The one that he showed there is probably the biggest one.
Xbox One into what we're seeing here with the Series X and PS5 was a little underwhelming, because, you know, frankly, you have a lot of games that are still making creative choices.
Also, like, how do you create a console at this point that like does something new? Like, what's it gonna do? Like VR, they said was going to be the thing, but like, what's it going to do, honestly?
All in on fidelity with Hellblade 2, or you're going all in on art style with something like Hi-Fi Rush. And it feels like maybe with AI upscaling and some of the tech that we're starting to get packed into these systems, that maybe we'll get to a point where less and less tough choices have to be made. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Not too much longer now. A couple of years or so, and we'll be talking about a new generation of systems. But until then,
or it's just going to all go cloud.
Ladies and gentlemen,
nah,
those are some thoughts.
We're still a little too far away from that.
Let me know what yours are down below. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.
Honestly, where I see things going is everything cloud-based, and then the PlayStation and Xbox or Microsoft just run things off of the game services. So like Game Pass, that kind of thing, and it becomes the Netflix era of video games. That's where I actually see things going. So when new consoles do happen, if they do happen, I will be curious to see what they are doing with that kind of thing. And yeah, the AI upscaling is another big thing, the PSSR and everything like that. It's interesting. But yeah, I will not be buying one of these, and I'm going to be sticking with PC. But if you got one, I'm curious what you think of it so far.